Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to another Adobe XD challenge. My name is Howard Pinsky, Senior XD Evangelist here at Adobe, and I hope you're all doing well on this Thursday afternoon and excited for yet another XD challenge. Today, we're going to be talking all about smart home devices, and we're going to be designing out our own smart hub. If you do want to follow along, there is a link in the description of this video, or you can go to behance.net/challenge/XD. If you scroll down, you'll be able to see all the challenges we've been taking part in so far: marketing banners, event invite cards, landing page, and today a smart home launcher. And the prompt is to design and prototype a smart home device with cards that launch into various applications. And if you do want to participate in past challenges, if you scroll down just a little bit more, there they are. It just goes on and on and on and on and on forever. It's amazing we have all this content available completely for free. All right, let's go ahead and hop over to Adobe XD. If anyone's joining me live, hello, live people. I see you in the chat. Hope you're all well. All right, here's the sample file for today. Again, we're going to be designing a smart home hub. I have included some inspiration down here. This on the left is the Google Nest Hub Max. And then we have the Portal Go from Meta. So, very similar devices. They have a screen, they kind of sit on a desk or a table or a counter, and they show you relevant information. Usually you can also activate them by voice, which if we have some time, we might get to. That could be kind of fun. And then up here at the top, if you launch this artboard, boop, you'll be able to click right here and watch a video. If you do want to get a little bit fancy and design a weather widget for your smart home hub, you can design something like this. And I have a video on YouTube on how to do exactly that. So you can click on this link right here. XD now supports hyperlinks, and you'll be able to be taken directly to YouTube. All right, let's get going. Now, for this smart home hub, we can definitely go in two different directions. We can go the lighter side or the darker side. Usually with these hubs, the interface changes based on what time of day it is. We're going to assume it's nighttime. I love dark stuff, so I'm going to go ahead and select the artboard and set a fill color right here in the Properties Inspector. I'm going to add a little bit of blue in there, right about there. Beautiful. Now, what I'm going to start to do is I'm going to start laying things out. We're going to block things out, then we're going to start replacing some of that content, just so we get an idea as to how things are going to look once everything is in place. All right, Rob says 32 degrees in Toronto. That's, did I put Celsius or, I mean, it could be Celsius, could be Fahrenheit, who knows? But yeah, if it's Fahrenheit, very cool. Celsius, boiling hot. All right, so at the top, we're probably going to have some sort of a navigation bar, and this will allow you to navigate to the various areas of your smart home device. And then right down here, we might want to start blocking out the actual content. So we might have things like music or smart home devices like lights, the weather, for example, calendar. We might also have a link to photos, and these could launch into different artboards as well. So I'll place one block here, and then maybe across here, we might want something. Let's put this about 16 pixels. I'll bring this in a little bit. I'm going to bring it up as well. So inside of the Properties Inspector, you can also do math, which is great because I don't want to do math in my head. So I can minus, let's say, 8 pixels, for example, right? Something like that. So if we have one down here, we have a nice 16 pixels in between. And I might make this a little bit thinner. And then I'll have one more. And then maybe on this side here, we might want an additional one. Now, what I can also start doing is I can, put these into groups and stacks as well. And I'm also, just to wrap this up, maybe one down here, right? Now, one thing you might find yourself needing to do at some point when you're designing interfaces like this is make certain elements larger or smaller. Now, what you definitely don't want to do is, make one larger like this, and then you have to select a bunch of them and then shift them over. It's not the worst thing in the world, but you want it to be a little bit simpler. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to place all of these into a group. Command-Control-G, and then within the Properties Inspector, we can turn a stack on. Now, you're going to notice that when I did that, XD also placed some elements in a group by itself. And that's so that we can very easily create a horizontal or vertical stack depending on the direction those elements are being laid out, right? So now I can dive in here. And as I make this larger, look at that. Everything beside it is automatically moving, which is wonderful. The same thing works in this direction as well, which is great. Or if I want to go in both directions, look at that. Fancy. But I do want to make this a little bit longer. And I'm purposely making these cards extend off the artboard. Now, in some smart home devices, you don't really see that, right? You do down here, it's going vertically down the artboard. You don't often see it going horizontal, but we're going to mix things up a little bit. But of course, if you want everything contained inside of your screen, then you can definitely resize things accordingly. All right, so we have our cards looking pretty good. And now we can start adding in some content, right? So we're going to leave the nav bar at the top for now, because I want to get to the good stuff in the cards. Now, this first one here might be something like our music, for example, right? So if I hop over to Finder or Explorer on Windows, I do have a bunch of album artworks that we can use, and this one over here looks pretty fancy from Adobe Stock, and boop, pop that in place. Now, I will remind you, if you don't have stock photos at your disposal, if you do go to Adobe Stock, stock.adobe.com, there is a free section right here at the top, and you can look up something like music, and this will give you almost 20,000 results for music. So you can use these in your projects completely free. You can use them for commercial purposes, I believe, and it's a good time, right? Beautiful. All right, so we have our image in place. I can double click and move it around if I want to. And maybe on each card, I'm thinking we might want some sort of a title to let users and viewers know that this is music, and the next one might be your lights and weather and that sort of thing, right? So with the text tool, shortcut key T, I'll type out something like your, and then maybe below, I'll do music, right? Now we're gonna mix up the typeface. We're gonna keep the same typeface, but we're gonna mix up the styling a little bit. And we obviously don't want blue. Blue's gonna be very difficult to see. And we might want maybe your to be something like medium, and then music, extra bold looks pretty good. And in terms of the size, I'm definitely going to want to bring back the line height a little bit. And then maybe we'll place it somewhere in this area here. Take a quick peek. It looks okay. I might bring it back in size a little bit more. Let's try 24. That could work, but what you might be noticing, and some of you are probably already screaming at your computers, could be a little bit difficult to see, right? And we touched on this yesterday in the previous challenge, is you might want to put a little bit of an overlay at the top of some of these cards. So if I dive in here, let me actually move, I'll get to that in a second. Let me dive into this group. I'm going to select this. We're going to run into a problem. And I was going to run into the same problem when I was going to move the text layer into this group. Watch what's going to happen. I'm going to duplicate this card, Command and Control D. Why is that happening, you might be asking? That's because we're inside of a stack, and the stack is set up to go horizontally. So when we duplicated this card, it rightly placed it to the right. So it's stacking the objects, right? But of course, in this case, we don't want that. So what you'll want to do is make sure that this card is in a group itself, Command and Control G, and I'll name this music. And now if we go into this group and duplicate, Command and Control D, we don't have that problem. So definitely keep that in mind, right? Now on this one, we're going to want to replace the image with a gradient. So I'm going to switch over to linear gradient, and the top color is going to be black, bottom color is going to be black, but the bottom color, 0% opacity. And that looks a little bit better, a little bit, but definitely don't want to go that far. So there's a few things we can do. We can either resize this like that, or we could have kept it the same size and opened up the color picker and then adjusted the gradient as well. You also may want to reduce the opacity of this gradient so it's not too strong. Somewhere, let's say, try around 60%. So if we turn off the gradient and then back on, definitely a little bit easier to read, right? I can move this into the group. All right, beautiful. That looks pretty good. And now down below at the bottom, we may want to display some very basic controls for our music player. So again, making sure I'm inside of this group, I'm going to grab my rectangle tool, draw one out, like that. And there are a lot of different ways we can go about styling this particular box. Let me take a quick peek. The white is a little bit harsh, considering we're going for a much darker version of this interface. So what I'm going to try is to enable a background blur at the bottom of the properties inspector. And these are always tricky sometimes to work with, right? Always tricky sometimes. I don't know what I just said. Sometimes it's tricky. Sometimes and always. Anyways, what you'll want to do, because we know we're going to have the controls and text over top of this container, we're going to want to make sure the blur is set all the way up, right? Because if you have it down, it's going to be a little bit difficult to see some of that information and interact with it. So we're going to crank the blur all the way up. And then we're also going to maybe drop the brightness a little bit to about 10. And that looks pretty good right there. It's not terrible, but we might want to bring some of the original color back into the shape, right? Now, right now, the original color is set to white. We probably don't want that. So we're going to set the color to black. And then down at the bottom, we're going to take the effect opacity slider and then bring that up. Oops. There we go. We're going to bring that up, let's say around 45%, maybe 50%, somewhere around there, right? So we have a much more subtle background blur now. And we might want a little bit of a border on here, possibly. We may not need it. We may need it. I don't know. We'll see. I'm going to turn that off for now. We might get back to that. All right. Now, for the controls, what we're going to do is we're going to add some simple text. Song title here. We're going to make this nice and small. Where did my cursor go? There we go. Something like that. And maybe I'll drop the weight. You want to be careful on an interface like this. Excuse me. You want to be careful on an interface like this. You don't want to use something like extra bold or black too much in terms of typeface weights and font weights, because you don't want to really guide someone's eye to one particular card if you have many cards that kind of have the same weight to them, right? So something like medium could work, and then we'll have artist name. I'll make that a bit smaller. Maybe I'll try Roman. And I might want to just drop the opacity just a little bit, something like that. That could work. And then we might want a little bit of a progress bar, right? So with the line tool, shortcut key L, we'll drag one all the way across. Let's make it quite a bit thicker. Ooh, 10 might be a bit too thick. Let's try 8. And there's going to be two aspects to this particular progress bar, right? There's going to be the how much you've listened, that portion of it, and then there's going to be the entire thing. Now, the entire thing is usually going to be a little bit grayed out. So I can drop the opacity a little bit, let's say around 30%. We'll see what that looks like. And if I duplicate this, Command and Control D, I'm going to bring it up to 100%, but bring this back to about here, right? So there's the progress that I'm working with. Now, someone in the chat is asking about Astoria, which is the typeface I am using. It is from Adobe Fonts, so you can definitely head over there and check that out. Now I'll put a little scrubber right here. Maybe I'll set the border to white. The fill will be set to like a darker color, and I'll bump up the size. There we go. So we have a progress bar. Now, I'm going to leave the, group that. I'm noticing I'm not placing this in the group. There we go. That's much better. I'm going to leave the rest of the controls for later because I do want to get to some of the other elements on this particular design. So this card right over here, this one right here, we might use for maybe our lights in our house. So we have smart lights all over the place, and you can turn them on or off very quickly, or you can click to go into another screen, which I would definitely encourage many of you to explore what other screens in this experience may look like. So here we might want, again, we're going for a darker interface. So we might want to darken this card a little bit, and maybe we'll do another linear gradient. And we'll do something like, maybe like a bluish gray. And then it'll go down to a bit of a darker bluish gray. Something like that, right? And maybe I'll make it diagonal. There we go. And I might want, depending on what's on this card, I might want a little bit of a border, very subtle border. So I'm going to set it at white and then drop the opacity to about 10%, right? So it's a very, very subtle border, as you can see there. And I'm keeping purposely the cards completely straight edged. But of course, if you want to get a little bit more creative with it, you can round out the corners. 16 might be a bit too much. but something like 8, or go very subtle with 4, but I'm going to keep it at 0 for this particular design. I'm also going to copy this layer and pop it in here. And I can also grab some guides from the top just to make sure I'm lining everything up perfect. And this is about 26 from the side. I'm going to actually bring it back to about 24. Go. I'm holding down my Alt-Option key and hovering over the side so I know how far it is. Just like that. So this will be your lights. I think this was extra bold. All right. Now on this particular card, we may want a toggle switch, for example, so we can turn the lights on or off very quickly, right? So what I'm going to do is with my rectangle tool, I'm going to draw one out. Let's round out the corners by pulling on these handles. Maybe for this particular design, the lights are on, right? So we're going to keep background at white. I'm going to add an ellipse in the center. Something like that. Now it looks like it doesn't line up perfectly, and that's probably because we have some strange values for our container in the background. So I'm going to bump that up, and I'm holding down my Command or Control key and using the arrow keys to resize 1 pixel at a time. I can also bump this up. 4, 4, 5, and then for this one, to indicate that the lights are on, we want more of a brighter state, right? So I'm going to use my color picker and we'll do a nice bright blue, right? You definitely want to keep that in mind. If you were to go for something like this, right, even though it's on the up position, which some users might see that and say, okay, well, that's on, right? Because this particular toggle is set to a darker color, other users may see that and say, okay, well, it's probably off, right? So color definitely matters for interactions like this. I'm going to group this and I'm going to call this toggle. Now, while we're working on this toggle, we can also activate it. We can create a component and create an interactive state for it, right? So I have this toggle switch selected that I just created. Over within my properties inspector over to the right, I can press the plus button to create our component, which will create our main component. And then now that we've already designed the first state, I can press that plus button one more time and create a new state. Now, we could create a standard state, or we can just go straight to the good stuff and create a toggle state. And what toggle state is going to do is it's going to automatically wire up state 1, which is what we're on now, to state 2, and then state 2 back to state 1. So you don't have to go into prototype mode and make any changes if you don't want to. There we go. And this I'm going to call off. And with that done, I can now dive in and make some changes. So I can move this down. I might want to, like I was talking about earlier, darker color, possibly. Or another way you can do this, if you wanted the whole thing to get a bit darker, you can set this at a lighter color and then set the background at a darker color. Now you have to be careful, right? Because it's on a darker background. So if you take a look here, it's not terrible, but definitely keep that in mind. You may want to put a border around it or darken it even more so it doesn't clash too much, but I think it could potentially work in this case. And like I was saying earlier, all the states are automatically wired up when you create a toggle switch. So I press the play button, and look at that. We have a toggle switch that works. Amazing. All right. Now, what I might also want for this particular toggle switch is we might want some text over to the left. Now, knowing that I might want the text to also change when the toggle is switched on or off, I might want to edit inside of the main component. So I'm going to double click in, and over here to the left, I might want to put, let's say, bedroom. That could work. I'm going to make sure that I'm lining things up. Might want some more guides. Go. And then we might want to indicate how many lights there are in this particular room. So we might have 4 lights. This is secondary information, so I'm going to drop that. I might want to drop the size just a little bit. Maybe I'll make this a touch larger. Drop it to bold. I was talking earlier, you probably don't want to avoid things like extra bold and black. And I might want to drop just a little bit. And then we might want to indicate maybe if they're on or off. So this might be on and then 100%. Oops. Yeah, I'm not loving the size and spacing of all of this, so I might just change this just a touch. Maybe bring that down a little bit. That's a little bit better. Still not loving it, but it's going to work for now. Now, because we edited and added these elements to the main component and the default state, if I now hop over to our off state, those elements are still there. But now I can dive in here and switch this to, let's say, off, right? And maybe I can drop the opacity a little bit as well. Now we're kind of pushing the bounds in terms of accessibility, so you would definitely want to be careful. This probably will not pass accessibility. So you want to, maybe actually in this case, we might want to do something like this. Yeah, maybe, possibly, maybe not. I don't know. There are a lot of different ways we can go about this, but we have our default state and we have our off state, right? So I'm gonna go ahead and press play, and now I can turn it off and on. And you're noticing that the text over to the left updates as well, which is great. What is the shortcut to remove the guides only? So that would be Command and Control and apostrophe. And if you go up to the View menu, down to Guides, there it is. Whoop. Guides. There. Right there. All right. Next, over here to the right, we might want to design our weather widget, right? So this one might be a little bit brighter, but also not too bright. Let's go for a linear gradient one more time. And we'll do something like that. And then a little bit darker. Very subtle gradient. And we're going to want the same sort of title in here. Got 24 from the side. And this one, instead of saying your something, because it might not be your weather, I mean possible, but we might want to indicate what city you're in. So this might be something like Los Angeles, right? Something like that. And then down below, we're going to want to indicate maybe how hot it is or how cold it is, right? So we might want to do 72, and then we're going to do the degrees symbol, which on the Mac, it's Alt or Option, Shift, and then the number 8. Make this nice and large, and we'll probably want to do something like extra light, for example. Something like that. We'll see what that looks like. Might be a little bit too large, we'll see. And then I did link, like I mentioned earlier, in this video, how to make a little blurred weather icon. But if we want to do something very simple, and actually what we can do is we can actually go to our icons. We can look up something like cloud. And we've got a lovely cloud right over here. Copy that. This plugin always puts icons in its wherever it chooses. And then here, you might want it, this one will be white, right? And we might want another smaller cloud in the front. So if I duplicate this, holding down Alt or Option and dragging down, I'll make it a little bit smaller. And then what I can do is activate a background blur in the Properties Inspector. And now we have this fun little icon. Right, there we go. Fun little icon. Happy little clouds, as Bob Ross would say. There we go. And we can place this somewhere in this area here or wherever you see fit for your particular design. All right. So with about a minute left, let's move over here to our photos. And if I hop over to Finder, I'm going to grab a photo. We can also grab a video, possibly. We want to have a little bit of fun with this. Let's grab this video right here, pop that in there, right? Want to make sure, like I showed yesterday, we dive in here, play automatically. That way, if we launch the prototype, we have this nice little video playing on the right. I'm going to make sure to grab this text. Maybe this will say something like your, and then maybe it'll be media. So it's not just photos, it's also media as well, right? There we go. It's a little bit dark. Let's see if we can change the video, make it a little bit brighter. am I doing? There we go. That's a bit better, right? All right, the last thing I want to show you is if you wanted scrolling to be enabled on this particular interface, select the entire group right here at the top, and then within the Properties Inspector to the right, you can turn a scroll group on. So you have horizontal, vertical, or horizontal and vertical. So if I turn on horizontal scrolling, I can make sure that, that my outline or my guides and my bounds are set on the side. And now I can very easily just click and drag to scroll, right? Now we may also want a little bit of padding. So if I select that group and over within the Properties Inspector, I'm going to set padding on the right-hand side, let's say about 56. Let's try that. And now I can scroll one more time, and there we go. Beautiful. Alrighty, that is going to wrap it up. Obviously, there's a lot you can do with a smart home device like this. I can't wait to see your work. Submit it on Discord or on Behance, or you can also tweet it at me at Pinsky, and I will see you all in the next challenge. Thanks, everyone.